I've had this Porter cable sander for over 30 years. It's a great tool. It's the Speed Bloc. It's model 330, made in US. Had it for, like I said, 30 years. It's worked great over the years. I've only had to replace this pad a couple of times. The foam tends to dry rot and then collapse. But it's a real cheap fix. You can buy this replacement pad on Amazon or eBay. 4 screws, pop it off, put a new one on. But after all these years, the spring finally gave out on the paper retention mechanisms. There's the hold the paper on, but on this side, the spring broke, so it no longer holds the paper. So it's kind of a bummer because this is a great tool. So I was able to find replacement springs, which I got these on eBay. They're also available on Amazon and probably some other locations as well. So we're going to put those on and replace the broken piece. Here's the broken piece. And to do that, I came up with a simple method, because you have to compress these springs a certain way to get them to go on here. So let me get started. We're going to start with a Phillips screwdriver, and we're going to remove, oops, don't hit the camera. Going to remove the 4 screws from the pad. So there's 3 and 1 more. So the pad's gone. Like I said, if you're just replacing the pad, that's how simple it is. This part on Amazon or eBay, you just buy a new one, take 4 screws off, and your sander's back to new. So this, to get to the spring, we're going to have to take this plate off of the motor, and to do that, there's an Allen in the center. This is a 5/32 Allen wrench, and if you notice, if you turn this, you don't really do much because the mechanism is turning inside. But they give you a little hole right there. If you drop something in there, it will wedge, and then you'll be able to break this free and take that off. So let's take this off. And what do we got here? We have a screw with a bevel on it and a fancy washer. The washer has a bevel to match that screw. So take this out, and at that point this should pop right off, and it does, and we'll set the motor aside. So there's our plate. You can see this is where the spring is supposed to go. If we look on this side, we can see the spring, and if we look at the orientation of the spring is set so that the coils go underneath. See, underneath there. So it's not this way, this would be over the top. It's this way, the springs are underneath. So let's take that, we'll take this piece, and we're going to put it in place. And we're going to take the original hinge pin. Now this hinge pin has little grooves at both ends, and those grooves will lock the whole thing together with that hole. You'll see when we get to that part. So here's our pin. We're going to slip this in and leave it a little bit short. But here's the tricky part that I figured out. These are tension pins. I bought these at Ace Hardware. They're 43 cents a piece. I think the model was 1/8 inch by 2 inch. So they're 1/8 inch diameter by 2. And what we're going to do is use those to give ourselves leverage to bend the spring. Because if you try to bend these by hand, you're going to hurt yourself. So we take these, and we're going to put them on both springs. Then we're going to grab a block of wood, and we're going to capture all that. It's like setting a rat trap. Hold that back, and then put a clamp on here. Hold it all together. So now the springs are held back. This is all in place. And now we're going to take the retaining lever, whatever this is called, the paper retaining lever, and put it over one. So we left one side long, the other one is short. We're going to put it over that long side, turn it around, and try to line up so the pin will come through that hole. Kind of hard to see with a light. And take a trusty hammer, and we're going to tap it and see if we can. It's moving. It's moving. And now those two grooves that were in that metal rod are now lined up with this metal piece here. So if I take this, we don't want the thing to go flying, so we're going to try to undo this. Okay, and so now our pins are kind of stuck. So we're going to pull these out. 1, 2, and now our spring mechanism works just like the original. There, we just got to reassemble the router or sander in reverse order. And on here, these holes here are where these screws go, and they're wood screws or a sheet metal screw, whatever these screws are. They're not a nut and bolt or threaded screw that you'd expect. So let's line up these 4 holes with these holes so I can see them. They're lined up. I'm going to take our fancy beveled washer, drop that back in place, take the screw, put it back in place. I'm just going to start to spin, so we want to drop the wedge in place. We messed up all our alignment, but that's okay. We'll fix that in a moment. So tighten that down. Okay, that's pretty good. Uh-oh. Got that wedged in there a little bit. That didn't work. Try that again. Okay, there we go. And ended up wedging the wrench in there. So now we're going to try to line up the holes. It's hard to see in the light, but I've lined up those screw holes so that when I drop this, cover the tape up again. I'll probably replace that tape. I'm going to drop this back in place. I should be able to just get those screws and they lined up. Missing one. All 4 screws in. I'm going to tighten those up. 1, 2, 3, 4. There it is. As good as new. The paper retentions is back on, and the sander's good to go. Let's check it out, make sure it works. A little bit of a squeak, maybe need some oil somewhere along the way. Not bad for 30 years. Good as new.